Welcome to our last Coaches Connect of the year, 2024. And thanks for everyone joining us live. Thanks to everyone watching this on replay. I am Kate Solo. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Precision Nutrition and a Master Coach, Super Coach, self-appointed and anointed. So it's lovely to see you all here. I'm curious, how are you all feeling? It's the end of the year. Are you in like the weird, calm, chill headspace, or are you frazzled and overwhelmed? Where are you at? Susan, I'm going to call on you. Is that okay? You're going to have to unmute, my dear.
There you go. Sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Okay, perfect. So I think that I'm in between that weird headspace where I'm not prepared for the things that I need to be prepared for, but I haven't realized it yet. So I'm
Okay,
not yet overwhelmed.
but about to be possibly.
Possibly.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Thanks for letting us know. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? And Susan, thanks for letting me pick on you.
Absolutely.
Well, hi, it's Yelena. I had a problem with the mic at the very beginning, so I'm sorry if you said something I couldn't hear or speak. So, hello,
No.
everyone.
Hello, hello. And how are you feeling end of the year?
Good, good. End of the year, I just started the course a couple of weeks ago. So, new year, new beginnings. I'm really excited. I'm excited to meet you all, guys, and just to see what's in it there for me. So, just to say hello to everybody.
Absolutely. I'm curious, like for those of you here, feel free to use the chat or feel free to unmute. If you could describe 2024 with one word, what would it be? Is it a swear word?
Let me
Pivot.
go. Hey, this Srini, I would say one word would be changes. There are lots of changes for me in this year.
There were many changes, yes, for you? So changes, and I think you're not alone because Anne Marie just said pivot in the chat. So that sounds like changes as well. Grateful, recovering, 5 years breast cancer free and rebuilding my business. High five to you, Susan. It's nice to have you here. Acceleration. Ooh, that is a strong word. I like that word. Growth. Very nice. And I guess as you're thinking about that, and I like that exercise kind of this time of year, I do that with clients sometimes. We like look back and we look forward, like what's the word that you feel describes 2024, and then what do you want the word to be for 2025? Is it the same word? Is it kind of in the same vein? Is it different? Like what's the vibe? What are you feeling? So Dan,
Opportunity.
go ahead.
Sorry, I just said opportunity.
Did you say opportunity?
Yeah, new opportunities,
Oh,
maybe.
I like that. That is a great word. Um, I saw resilience, success, dominate. Oh, I like verbs too, right? Like for words like for the word for the defining word, I love verbs. They're very actiony. Roller coaster. Vicky, I don't know if that was the 2024 or whether that's what you want 2025 to be, which respect. I mean, hey, adrenaline junkie over here. Totally see that. Conciseness. Okay. hmm And I'm curious, when you're thinking of these words, if you do absolutely nothing, will they happen? Sometimes they will, right? Because, like, let's say, I don't know, maybe there's a big move coming up, maybe there's a big change coming up, maybe, I don't know, you're expecting a new addition to your family. It's like you just have to kind of settle in and wait, and like changes will come and pivots will come. But sometimes, if you're in a more of a stable spot, if we do nothing, that word may not happen. So somebody said like accelerate or acceleration, like that, something like that might not happen on its own, right? That might actually require some additional, maybe pressure or actions or planning from you. So Daniel saying, I need to put effort into making it effortless. Ooh, that's an interesting one, right? Like, to make it effortless, there actually needs to be some effort. It's that little bit of oppositional paradox sometimes. Like, have you heard that expression? Like, we talk about how structure can create freedom. It's a little bit of that, right? Like, where it actually takes effort for something to become effortless. I like that. Hey, Stephen, it's nice to see you. Well, we can keep jamming on the word, but also I want to open up the floor to like any questions or like case studies or things that you're maybe trying to figure out this time of year, or perhaps even defining the specifics of what the next year is going to look like for you in terms of like next actions. Like, what are you actually working on? The way I think about it is with goal setting, we could have a goal, a big goal, a small goal, a medium goal, but we tend to not like wake up on a random Thursday and do the goal, right? Like that's not really how goals work. And I think that's where the gap often is, where we have the goal, but we don't really have the plan for the random Thursday in increments of 20 minutes. Right? There's that like, well, I just need to like sit down and work on my business. And that is a very vague thing that in your head might mean like, once I have 2 days to myself and my family's out of town, I will sit down and meditate and like overhaul my entire business. And that ends up never happening. So I'm curious, what do you have happening? What are you trying to figure out? And I'm in the chat here. Susan's saying 2025 is risk. Putting myself out there. Okay, I like that. Helena, is that how I say your name? How close?
Yeah, it's close. It's Yelena, but it's good.
Say it again, please.
Hmm?
Say it again, please.
Yelena.
Yelena.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. So Yelena says, breaking my goals into specific action and tasks. Yeah, I think that's often the challenge. And we do this for clients.
Yeah.
Right? We do this for clients all the time. It tends to be harder to do it for ourselves. Like, I often compare coaching to like cutting hair, right? Like, if you're a hairstylist, it's very hard to cut your own hair at the same level that you would cut your client's hair because the angle is all wrong, right? Like, it's just hard to see, right?
Yes, exactly.
So,
I'm practicing with my kids. I have 3 of them. So all the things I'm doing, I'm doing with myself and 3 of them. So
well, hey, all the power to you, because if you can practice on your children, that is like black belt ninja skills right there. Because I always joke, people say like, your children are so lucky to have, a coach for their mom. It's like, yeah, but see, like when you love people very much, the coaching skills tend to just magically evaporate,
oh
right?
yeah.
Like when they're spreading peanut butter on the floor. Wow.
Yeah, that's true. And you very often hear, okay, mom, where did you read that? What book says that? Can you
That's
please
awesome.
stop reading? Yeah.
That's awesome. Mine are too young to do that. My husband would say that sometimes. He's like, yeah, don't professor me, or like, don't coach me.
Yeah.
That's Your coaching
Well,
voice.
I gave up on him, so I'm focusing on 3 of them.
Would you be comfortable sharing like one of the goals when you're say breaking my goals into specific actions and tasks? Like what is the one goal that you might have for 2025 that you'd feel comfortable sharing?
Yes, well, one of the goals that I already start doing is I would like to meditate every day. So for a very long time, it's been my wish, desire, but then I made a goal of it, and then I did it in specific small tasks, such as, okay, I'm going to block those 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I took my pillow, it's on the floor, so I booked a specific time during the day and trying to make that time. And if not like that time, then I have a plan B some other time during the day. So all these like little things that I kind of pick up the cues during the day that will remind me, okay, Elena, now is the time. Now is the time. So just
Yeah, and is that happening now that you've put all of those
yes,
things into place?
yes, yes,
So I have a
yes.
question for you. Like, what happened in between you wanting to do that? Like you said, you've been wanting to do that for a long time, and then you actually putting all those little things in place. Because there are a couple of things there that could have happened. You could have learned a whole bunch of new information that you didn't have before about how goal setting works. But I actually don't think that's what happened here. Like it's not that
Well,
you didn't know to break things up before. So what happened?
I think it was like, how bad do you want to meditate? I think it boiled down to that. Like, okay, you're just saying you want to, but how bad do you want to? I think that's something that kind of challenged me. As
And
in,
how bad did you want to?
like,
What was your answer to that?
I really, really badly wanted, because like my oldest son, like I want to try. He's 14, and I really want to try meditation with him because he's struggling with ADHD and stuff like that. So that's something that I really want him to focus on. So in order for me to help him, I need to help myself first, and it goes back to the same thing we're doing with coaching. So it's not just nutrition; it's the whole thing. So with the food and meditation and everything, I'm trying to do it myself so I can kind of translate to him and to them, all of them. So I think that's kind of be like, how bad do you want him to succeed? How bad do you want him and myself, right? So it kind of, I
You
think
know,
that's the point.
I think I find it very fascinating just in the kind of work that we do. Like, what is that thing that finally goes like, okay, I'm ready, right?
Yes.
And it's very rarely like, which is why I said like, well, maybe you didn't know how to set goals before and then you did, and that's what happened. But it's rarely that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
because the
Yes.
vast majority of people no, like if you were to walk around on the street and ask people about SMART goals, like most people know what that is, and they know
Yeah.
they're supposed to make a specific and actionable, blah, 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 right? But it's the actual doing. The big piece is often the readiness. And it's this like the how bad, or sometimes it kind of comes into like, I call it like getting sick of my own story, right? Like sometimes it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like I'm tired of saying I want to do it, and I just freaking gonna do it already.
Yes, and if you did something like that, for example, it was the same thing with me a couple of years ago with the exercises, because I'm an ex professional tennis player. So I was like, for 10 years I haven't done anything. I should start, and I never did. So at some point, I don't know, something just clicked, and I start practicing, and I made it a routine. So now there's so many days when I just wake up and I don't feel like it, but it's just a routine. I just start putting, the shirts and everything. So I kind of want to have that feeling for meditation as well, to kind of put it in like the routine. It's not something that I'm thinking about. It's just something that happens after the practice. So kind of like a stacking up on good habits. That's
Do
something
you,
that helped me a lot.
when you were considering getting back to movement and exercise, was there some sort of goal in your mind? Like, where it's like, well, I just really want to get back on a tennis court, or I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to get strong, or I want my back to stop hurting? Or was it more of, I want to get back into exercise and sort of stay there forever because that's just how I want to live my life? Which one was it?
Well, I think it's all of the above, because my kids are athletes as well, and I can't kind of preach to stay active and practice and stretch if I don't do it. I feel that kind of it's not fair. even though I'm older and everything. So I want them to see me doing it, so they can kind of be like, you know what, mom is doing it. Why shouldn't I? That's one thing. And the other thing is that I had a problem with my back, so I started as a consequences of that. So I think it's all of the above, and I really like the feeling. I like when I say, I practice 3 times a week. I like that feeling when I stay behind the fact that I do it 3 times a week. So I don't know, it just feels good.
Yeah, well, and I think that there is that, like, it fits with your values, it fits
Yes,
with who you are as a person. It removes dissonance for you
yes,
because, like, well, I'm an active person, I'm a healthy person, I'm a coach, but then maybe I'm not exercising as much as I would like. That creates dissonance, like it kind of feels
yes,
icky and
yes,
sticky. And then when I'm
yes.
living what I preach, it actually just feels good.
Yes, yeah, that's something that's like I really need to do things that I preach, as you say, because when you tell things like to your clients or kids or whoever, and you go back home and you don't do it, I don't know, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not real for me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that also brings up the point. I always think like that I have to be careful in what I preach because then I
Yes.
kind of have to practice it, right? And I think there is actually a lot of pressure in the coaching industry, like when we consider like the pressure on aesthetics, right? Like where I've talked to coaches and they're saying like, well, if my clients want a six pack, then I must have a six pack. And it's like, okay, well, that's a lot of pressure, first of all. Second of all, not necessarily a maintainable goal long term. So I
Mm.
would actually question if that should be part of your preaching, right? Like, because
Yes.
consider, that with preaching of, I want to move my body in a way that feels good to my body and can keep me healthy and strong for years to come. And that can look 1 million different ways. And then
Yes.
there is no dissonance where if I'm a trail runner, I have zero interest or pressure from my clients to get into trail running because that's not part of what I preach. Part of what I preach is that we should find movement that brings you joy. That could
Yes.
be Zumba or tennis, right? Or standing on your head.
100%. Yes, exactly. It's exactly that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I also wanted to point something out to you guys, and those of you that come to these regularly, I do this. This is like the meta coaching when I kind of like zoom out and I say, "Did you notice that thing? Did you notice how slow to start the conversation was today? Did you notice the awkward silence in the beginning and how it just felt sticky?" Right? And I wanted to call that out because that's normal. It happens. It's not really that scary. It's a little bit uncomfortable. I don't like it, but it also doesn't bother me because I've been doing this long enough to know that, what happens eventually? Eventually, I ask some questions and some people answer, and then Yelena volunteers and we have an exchange, and then we are warmed up, right? And we're kind of off to the races. But I know those questions come up as coaches themselves go off and lead group coaching sessions, and it just feels like, this is like crickets, right? Or sometimes a one-on-one coaching session can feel like this too, where if the client in front of you, really low energy, really introverted, right? Like where it just feels like, the conversation, it's just like, it's like pulling nails, right? And this is just something I want to normalize because it's like, hey, we just all had that. Wasn't a big deal. Some of you might have not even noticed, right? Until I actually called it out. I noticed because I'm leading the group, I'm facilitating, I'm like, right? And I kind of have to pause and breathe, and I know what happens, and I know how it goes, and we're gonna warm up, and we're all gonna be okay. Well, was that helpful as a call out? Yes, good. Okay. There's some chatter in the chat. Steven says, as coaches, it can be easier to help a client break up the goal because it's an area where we have knowledge expertise. But when it comes to our business, it might be something where we have a lower level of knowledge, and therefore there can be uncertainty around what steps actually make sense to do. And Susan completely agrees, right? Like with all the new technology, feel like I'm all over the place and need to consolidate and integrate some of the things that I use. So, Stephen, I'm so with you here, but I think the one skill that I feel very strongly about is the skill to generalize and the skill to see the potential for generalizing. And what I mean by that is, if we are experts in setting goals and breaking up big things into small things, I would argue that it is not specific to vegetables. And if we learn to zoom out and generalize, we can actually do the same for any goal. And I often call out those parallels between, like, well, hey, like you do this for your client and movement and vegetables and eating healthy. Let's take a look at how we can do this exact thing for your goal right here. We're going to take a big thing and we're going to break it into small things, and we're going to put it on the calendar. And it's very often the trouble is when we actually don't see those parallels, where I would regularly work with somebody who is like an executive in a company. They have all these meetings, they have this super busy schedule, and then they're telling me how, oh, like they really suck at time management. Like, do you suck at time management because you somehow have managed to juggle this really busy schedule for the last 15 years? Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm good at time management over there, but not over here. Okay, fair enough, but those skills, they don't disappear. Like, you have them. We just have to take them now, and we have to see how they apply to this other thing that you're doing. What enables you to juggle a schedule? What enables you to show up on time for meetings? We can take that and we can use that in this other area that makes you also able to show up to workouts on time or plan meals, etc. I'm just looking at Susan's comment here. So the technology piece, I feel like I'm all over the place and need to consolidate and integrate some of the things I use. I'm considering getting outside help with these things because they're not my areas of expertise, so I'm spending too much time on them. Things like marketing, technology integrations may help me able to focus on the things I love, and I'm confident someone else has the skills to do them better than I do right now. Yeah, and Susan, I don't think you're alone. Would you feel comfortable elaborating a little bit? Like, are you talking about systems, tools, apps, like you're drowning in subscription fees, all of the above? Like, tell us more.
I think, yes, it's all of the above. I know that I'm using a couple different email programs. I'm using I found that I have been using iCal, and I found that I love Google Calendar. So I recently switched to that, but I don't know how to integrate all of the little features, like, what's the one that begins with a Z? What is it?
Zoom? What we're
No,
using?
I use Zoom. I know Zoom, but the one Zapier, I think it's called, that integrates some different features. The technology, I just have not in the last 5 years kept up with all of the technology available. So I've been starting to use AI more, which is super cool. And I've been trying to use some different things, but I think there are things that I'm paying for that I don't need because I'm already have the capability of using it somewhere else. And there are features in the software that I have that I'm not using because I don't know it exists or I don't know how to use it. So it's a combination of things, and there's so much of it that I feel like I'm behind on, that I could do what you said and take that generalize and break it down into smaller steps. But I do feel like in this case, I know that I could do it and take longer, or I know that I might be able to get even a high school or college student that could use the extra money that could help me consolidate things, and they would do it faster.
Can we just imagine a high schooler in your area? His name is Jake. I'm thinking of
Okay.
this right now. So his name is Jake, is in grade 11, super tech savvy, and you decided to hire him. Can you tell Jake, I'm just going to pretend to be Jake for a second, what is it you want me to do? I'm super tech
Um,
savvy. Tell me. I'll do it. What is it?
okay, so don't have the list of programs, but what I'd like is to figure out a way to make my Google um, flag messages that I need to respond to. I know that there's a way to do that, and I need to put it on a to-do list. I need to figure out whether my Zoom and my G Suite are both necessary in my business, and if so, what capabilities they have that I'm missing.
So hold on one second. I'll pause you there. So
Yeah.
one question, the first one, you said, I want my Google, so I want my Gmail.
Yeah,
Flag messages for me that I need to respond to. Yes?
sure. Yes.
What is the criteria that they would need to be flagged? Like what messages are going to be flagged?
The ones that are not junk messages, which I think is a whole nother piece. I get too many junk messages and need to sweep those out of my inbox.
So then is it possible that the actual underlying problem is not Google needing to flag certain messages that are not spam, but rather having less spam?
Both, sure, definitely.
And you notice what I like, this is kind of like this specific task that we are talking about is besides the point, right? This is again me
Mhm.
zooming out and generalizing, right? Because what I wanted to point out, there is often this belief, and I think it's a very legitimate belief, I hold this too, is that when we're overwhelmed with a thing, we want to hire out to somebody who like whose expertise that is. 100%, right? The hardest part of that process is not finding the person that you trust or giving them the money or hiring.
Sure,
It's actually
sure.
going to be explaining the actual problem,
Yeah, what do you actually need? And then can they handle the problem, or is it something you need to do yourself?
right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that you've mentioned, right, to me, Jake, is that, well, I need to figure out if I need both Zoom and G Suite. No high schooler is going to be able to help you with that.
No, that is definitely true.
Right? So I
Yeah.
think like this is part of like actually getting really clear, like here's my list of all the things I'm overwhelmed with. But then
Mm-hmm.
each of these problems is actually going deep yourself and figuring out like, so what is it that I need Jake to do?
Oh, absolutely. That would be my first step.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And I think also just kind of figuring out, um, like the question I very often ask is there a problem? Question mark. Like, is there even a problem? Because one of the part of the overwhelm that you've mentioned, I think like this is a lot of us can relate to this. And please, if you relate to this, let us know or like wave or put it in the chat, is that you're aware of this thing that exists and you feel kind of the pressure to know it or know about it or use it or integrate it in your business because you're kind of feeling FOMO, like everyone's doing, like, like I should be using AI in my business. Meanwhile, my question would be like, well, what's the problem that we would be looking to solve? Because me not using AI in itself is not a problem. What is the problem? I'm thinking of an acupuncturist in my town where I live, and she's been working as an acupuncturist for many years. She's booked out weeks in advance, full practice always. She uses a paper calendar, like actual, that big page, like you open it and like
Mm-hmm.
writes it in with a pencil. Because if somebody cancels, then she deletes it. She doesn't delete it. She erases it with an eraser. So part of me drives me insane a little bit every time like I see that paper calendar come out. For my own selfish reasons, I think I would love if she used like Jane app or something, because then I could just, pull it up and book it and blah, 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 and do the thing. Meanwhile, I have to go see her in person, get the treatment, and then she has to pull out her calendar, and then we have to book our next appointment together. But of course, for her as a business owner, there is no problem to solve,
Sure.
right? Like there isn't. So should she be using Jane app? Well, in order to what? In order to simply be more tech savvy, but in order to what, right? Like, and we kind of get to start answering like the 5 whys question. Like, but why? Right? Like,
Right.
why? Like, I know it has all these features, and as you were saying that, I immediately think to my like GPS watch, to my like running Garmin watch that like measures my heart rate and measures my pace and measures my distance, and oh my God, it has potential to measure like another 13 million things, and I don't know what they are. And I think it has potential to like lead me to my workouts and peel potatoes, and I have no idea how to do that. And it has this like really overwhelming manual online with all the features and combinations of 4 buttons that I need to, I was like, I don't care. Am I underutilizing that as a device? 100%.
Sure.
But is that a problem?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for delving in a little bit with us. That was
Absolutely.
anyone else? Where are you at? What has come up for you as we were speaking with a couple of folks here?
Hey, this is Srini again. So while Susan was describing her tech issues, I just realized, I just pinged her as well on a direct message. I have been with technology for a little over 25 years, and now trying to be a coach. I could help Susan or anyone else with technology questions. Ping me and we could probably get on a one-on-one call, and we could maybe answer some of those questions and take this further.
Awesome. Well, that is a very kind offer, Srini. Like, so maybe you two can connect. And I mean, this is why I love these calls. So, Srini, feel free to ping Susan or drop your email if you
I've done that
that,
already.
yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much for offering. That's very kind of you. Who else? What's going on?
I was sitting here trying to think as I was listening to Susan talk about the problem thing and kind of listen to your response, and what kept popping up for me in that thought process was not just thinking about, is there a problem to solve? But I think it's really easy sometimes to get a solution in our minds and then get fixated on, I have to find that specific solution, versus taking that step back and saying, am I really solving the bigger issue, or am I solving what I think is the problem? So, for example, maybe the initial reaction is, oh, I've spent the last 20 minutes responding to emails. Most of them were spam. So in that moment of overwhelm, I feel like I need to solve that problem. But the reality is, the bigger issue may be that you just need to schedule a set time to check emails, because maybe you just check your email too much and therefore you're constantly seeing it and it's driving you crazy. But in that instantaneous moment, it feels like that specific thing is the problem. Like, if I could just eliminate this, or if I could just glance and see what was important in the moment, then I wouldn't waste all this time.
Thank you. Actually, I see where you're coming from with that, and I completely agree that it can definitely happen. And it is happening with one piece of it for me. I think the technology side of it is a little more complicated, where I don't have a good system set up to accept payments. I don't have a good system set up to integrate some of the features that I want to integrate. Not looking at technology, thinking that there are things out there that I don't know about, that I don't need to know about or integrate, but more things that I know exist that I really want to integrate, but am not sure how to do so to make my life easier. But your point actually brings me to the whole marketing piece of it. And the truth here is, if I go too deeply into my whys, is that I am very, very nervous putting myself out there again, to be honest. Like, maybe if I have somebody else do it for me, it'll be easier. But I've been in the field for a long time. Oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional. This is crazy. I think when we get to our whys, we do. But I've been in the field for a very long time. I have a degree in the field and lots of certifications. And it's hard to put yourself out there again when you've been out of it for a bit. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think, Susan, you hit the nail on the head, right? Like when we, like, when you get to it. You know when you get to it. You feel it. You feel it in your body. We like see it in the call, right? Like we know when the client gets to it, it's that like, it's this, right? And I think the parallel that I can draw here, that won't be perfect, so I apologize for that in advance, right? But if you've ever worked with somebody who is trying to get into movement, into exercise, and they're really trying to figure out like what program should they be following, right? Like what program, what exercises? I should hire a coach. Like, should I hire this coach or that coach? They're interviewing coaches. They want to hire it out. But then when we kind of get to it, the it might be their equivalent of putting myself out there. And that might be getting back to the gym. Getting back to the gym is terrifyingly scary, because last time I was at the gym was 12 years ago, and I slipped and I broke my knee and I was in pain for a year and a half and I couldn't get, do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and then once we get to it, I'm getting goosebumps. This is like how my body also tells me things, right? Like when we get to it, everything kind of falls away, because you can't unknow the it, where you kind of go like, shit, it's that, eh? It's not the email, it's not the filters, it's not the tech, it's not, and I think you said it right out loud, and I think that was so incredibly brave, and I'm so grateful to you for that, is that maybe if I just hire it out, if I just pay somebody else to do it, it will be easier. So like, I don't have to put myself out there. Maybe they can put themselves out there for me on my behalf. If I could just, give it money and it will solve it. Right. So thank you. I think every single person here can relate to that so much, so hard. Oh, look at all the hearts in the chat. I think on a somewhat tangentially related note, something I wanted to share that I've been seeing in the last couple of years are folks in the coaching world who have 2, 3, 5 years ago have kind of gone down the path of, the streamlining and building systems, right? Like all the buzzwords that we use. And that often meant outsourcing certain things, outsourcing lead generation, outsourcing social media content, creation of reels, posts, whatever that is. I'm seeing a very interesting trend of like also folks talking about this publicly, of letting go of VAs, letting go of assistants, letting go of social media managers, letting go of lead generation, outsourcing agency things, and actually getting back to it themselves. Because what I'm feeling a growing trend in the last few years, and I think all of you have seen that too and felt that too, is a bigger and bigger focus on the person, on the personality, and on the relationship. And it's very hard to outsource that, right? And I mean, I've worked with a VA for a number of months and she was great. And then we kind of got to the same point where I ended up ending our relationship, because goodness knows, like for social media content, I think I could outsource it and it would be easier, but it also would not be me. It wouldn't be as, like, no one can write me, like no one can do that, right? And I could also hire somebody to take my content and repurpose it to death, because there's hundreds of thousands of words out there that I have written. But then what I would lose is the immediate life connection, right? Like I could move back and I could have like an, Instagram account do this, as there's like repurposed posts going up from my own words going back 5 years. But I actually would then lose immediate touch with what's like happening right now. If you go on my Instagram account right now, you will see a post from a couple of days ago where I took a picture of myself with a Starbucks coffee and I wrote about it, and I wrote about goal creep and how that immediacy. I didn't take that picture last year. It was literally taken as I was drinking that coffee, and I was thinking of that post as I was drinking that coffee, and it went up live that later that day. There is that immediacy, the closeness. It's the closeness that you and anyone else following and reading gets to have to me, to my life. Like, you notice how close you are to me? You're literally in my day, in that moment. That is so like precious right now on like social media, when you feel like fully in someone's world. Like, I think that really allows to build that rapport before we even know someone. And I consider that to be probably the biggest compliment, when people that I've never met or I've never interacted with, they can message me, I feel like I know you. And it's like, that's awesome. Like that's what I'm striving for. And then also notice how you yourself are thinking about hiring decisions. How are you hiring people? And how are you buying for things? A friend told me recently, she's like, if I want to get my nails done and I look up a nail salon in town and only have a picture of nails and I don't even have like a picture of who's running the business, she's like, I'm not going there. I need to know who's good. Like, I'm going to be holding hands with them for an hour. Like, I would like to know you. So that, I feel like, has been a bigger trend, right? Like for the small business ownership, assuming you're not, Nike, for the solopreneurship, for the online coaching, is that importance of rapport and closeness. And like, who are you? Like, show me who you are. Tell me about you. So I know Steven before I hire him, or at least I feel like I know Steven, or I know Susan before I hire her. Yelena, you're muted. Tell us, because I do want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, sorry about that. I said it's really interesting what you said, but I think it also goes back to our values. So if your value is to have a high quality relationship, that's what you're going to seek. So it's quantity versus quality. I don't think that everybody has the same value. So maybe you have somebody who just wants to, have hundreds of people working with him, or him working with them, and that's his value. He just wants to have a lot of clients, but quality maybe is not his value. And I think
But hold on.
those
So
people,
the example that you're describing, somebody who just wants to work with hundreds of clients, that in itself is not a value. What's a value?
quantity, money,
Okay.
mass production, maybe, people creating different apps just to,
Sure.
have a certain amount of lectures and to earn a lot of money for the already pre-recorded lectures. I'm just making
So
it up.
let's call it money, let's call it financial security, right? Like that being, or stability, or whatever you want to call it, or income
Yes,
revenue, like that is the number one, like generating value here.
yes.
So great.
I don't think those people would waste. I think those people would feel as it as they're wasting time, taking time with every single person, trying to understand them and going into depth. And that's what I find really interesting from my perspective, is that if you are really curious about somebody and you really want to have a quality relationship, that's when you're going to take your time and take care of your Instagram or whatever you're using. But if you just want to have, like 3, 4, 5 videos or reels or whatever a day, I don't think you have time to communicate with all those people. I mean, that's
For
just
sure.
my
And
my
I think
opinion.
this is my caveat here, was that we are talking about mostly solopreneurs, right? Because like when I say things, I kind of say things to my people, and my people in this case are all of you guys, right? And I know just from experience that the person you're describing exists, but that
Yes.
person tends to not be this group, right? So
Oh yeah.
there is that, like for me, there is the emphasis and the like maybe bias even towards that closeness, rapport, transparency, and relationship. And I think the other thing I want to call out here is that health is an interesting one. Because when we talk about health and when we work with people on their health, it is deeply intimate in a way that does not compare with other aspects of our lives. I don't need to have a personal connection and rapport necessarily with my accountant. It's nice when I have it, but I don't need to. And I don't need to have that relationship with my car mechanic.
Yes.
But with my health coach, I could not imagine working with somebody who I don't connect deeply, right? And absolutely, I think that is a personal bias that I will admit and acknowledge. But what I'm seeing is that I'm seeing a trend towards that kind of hiring in the industry of health and wellness, right? Like where folks are valuing that relationship more, that connection more. And what that means for an online coach running their business is that the buying process is often taking longer as people are sussing you out, as people are trying to build relationship with you before they hire you. They're kind of trying to kind of learn about you and who you are and what you stand for. So some of the things you've alluded to in the beginning of our conversation, like the kind of person I am, right? Like
Yes.
really getting to like, I want to know who Yelena is as a person, as a parent, as a coach before maybe I hire her. Yeah, I so appreciate you saying that. Daniel, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So, to add to your conversation and so to Yelena, I think it's like from the business perspective, as I understand it personally, when we create these personal relationships, you are not like competing with many different people. That's what you were referring probably to, Kate, as opposed to creating, let's say, meal plans and workout plans that it is easy to compete with. that are not personalized. They are mostly templates, and now like with an AI, you can produce thousands and thousands of different, and it's like you are competing for price, and not even for price, because I can produce thousands of them for free with almost no effort. So these values that you then mentioned also probably reflect a successful business strategy, whether you are going for volume or you are going for more connection or more personalized approach. But even then, I think the brands that I have in my mind, even when they have like a higher volume, they are built on some kind of personal brand, or they started small, right? And people buy them for that kind of brand, even that now you are not maybe working with that specific person who started it, but still you are like, buying the brand. And then you, Kate, mentioned one interesting point, and that was about that closeness of relationship, and maybe that you don't need it with your accountant, but maybe with your health coach, it's a benefit. So in terms of like health coaching, I think we just went through this in a PM level 2 course, and that is like people need to speak, right? To just thinking and writing these, let's say, problems in the chat doesn't lead to that kind of change we want to elicit in people as when they are speaking with us.
Yeah, and I think Danielle, to your point also, and I think that's what Yellen and I were talking about earlier as well, is like volume for the sake of volume is not a value, right? Like that's not what folks are shooting for, but the model could be different. Like if I'm building a startup and I want to build an app that like tracks food and analyzes things, and then people are paying $5 a month for that app, and maybe Apple buys it for millions of dollars, right? Like that's going to be a very different model. Where if we consider like most online health coaches that I know and work with and have worked with, that tends to not be the model. In fact, health coaching tends to attract a very particular kind of person who really enjoys the transformational effect that rapport-based coaching can have on someone's personal health and life and relationship, right? Like they really like that. And not to compare coaches with therapists, but I'm about to. If you were to consider a psychotherapist, the way their practice is built is not to eventually scale and sell the practice and write a book, right? And that happens sometimes for therapists. But for the most part, that's not the work. The work is that you show up every week, one-on-one with a person in front of you, and you help them make a little bit of progress, right? You help them dismantle a dysfunctional thought. You help them reframe a situation. Or think of like a teacher. Like, again, what's the work? The work is like you show up in front of the classroom and you teach, and you help, and you move folks forward. Stephen.
That really helped me early in my career, just something I actually learned here at PN, was this idea of the worry and wonder, especially in regards to our business, because I think early on there's this balance of you're trying to create a vision, trying to decide what you want your business to look like, but at the same time we have to live in where we are right now, right? If I have no clients, I have tons and tons of time to do social media and do things in real time and be live and everything else. But if I have, say, 50 one-on-one clients, I'm probably not going to have a lot of extra time to do those things. And I think what happens a lot of times is early in that stage, and I know this was the case for me early in my career, was I felt like I needed to set up all these systems and get all these things in place for what might one day be. And the reality is that a lot of the stuff that I thought might one day be never came to fruition because I realized that I didn't actually want that kind of business once I got to that point where I could have it. And I wasted a lot of time in the beginning trying to create the perfect systems for this ideal business that ended up not actually being my ideal business.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that. And I want to give the folks a little bit of context about the wondering and worrying. I learned that term when I first started working for PN. Everyone here knows there's like PN speak, right? There's the PN speak, there's the term, yes, like, yeah, ready, able, and willing, wondering and worrying, meet the client where they're at. We should make a t-shirt, right? Like just like the t-shirt with all the sayings. So wondering and worrying is that expression that I learned when I first started coaching. And we would use that expression specifically in the PN's coaching program for men and women, which is a 12 months coaching program helping folks eat, move, and live better. So consider this, you have clients enrolling in a 12-month coaching program. When I signed up for that program as a client, which is how I found PN for the first time, I was terrified. I have never committed to anything for 12 months in my life outside of my like university degree. So that was a very scary commitment. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work on my health and wellness and fitness and nutrition for 12 months. My point is, it's a long journey, y'all, right? Like, so they're signing up for this 12 months thing. And I kid you not, in week 1, there's this tendency for folks to email all the questions they can think of to their coach about like, what happens if? Hey coach, so I know we're just starting out. I'm in week 1. I've done my warm up. I'm logging my food, whatever the habit is. But I'm just wondering, like in August, it's January. In August, I'm actually thinking of doing this trip, and I just don't know, like, what habits are we gonna have then? Like, how am I gonna do my workouts in August? You hear the wondering and worrying? It's a legitimate question, but at the same time, like, we're actually not there yet. Like, we're just not. It's not time yet to be considering that question, problem solving, troubleshooting, and there will be time when it will be time. But to Stephen's point, when it comes to business growth, I often give this somewhat counterintuitive advice to folks I work with if they're just building up their practice. I actually suggest that they don't focus on systems at all, or processes, or integration, or tools at all until they have 10 clients. 10. Because in the beginning, the focus is to get clients. I'm not saying that's anyone here in the room, but what I am seeing over and over again is for us to build systems to kind of figure out the processes becomes that equivalent of getting ready for the August trip in January, where we're actually not there yet. Meanwhile, when we get there, a lot of things resolve themselves. Like the tensions arise and you're like, oh, that's what I need to solve for. And then the things that I might have been worried about, they actually, as Stephen was pointing out, they never even come to fruition. So it's that like, what do I need? Not only what do I need to solve, but what do I need to solve right now as well? Yeah, thank you for calling that out, Stephen. I appreciate it. Stephen says you can't really build systems until you have some data. Any system you build before you have clients will change anyway. That's perfect, right? Like I couldn't have said that better. And I really want to borrow here. I think Srini was saying that they were in tech. Like in tech, there is a saying, like if you ship when it's ready, you ship too late. If you ship when it's ready, you ship too late. Like, what is the beta? The beta app is always shitty. It's supposed to be shitty because it's launched in order to collect data to see where it breaks and what it is you need to fix.
We actually have a term called MVP, minimal viable product, which
Minimum
means,
viable product.
yeah, it's like the smallest denominator which your clients can use, and that's about it. And as minimal as possible, right? I think
Well, and
that's primarily what you're saying.
I think for folks here, I also would argue that that minimum viable product, the MVP, actually has to be less viable than you think. Like less viable, even less. Because again, like there is the high bar, because coaching attracts folks that really want to help, but they also want to do an amazing job at it. So the bar for viable becomes really high. And I would argue that that's actually lower than you think. Like, what is the viable?
I would focus on minimum. That's primarily what you're also saying, right? I mean, in MVP, it is minimum viable. Minimum is
Minimum, that's right.
Very minimum, right? So.
Yeah. It's that time, y'all. This was our last Coaches Connect for 2024. So next time I will see you, we'll be in the next year. I'm excited to see you all, to hear how things are going for you, and we'll keep on plugging away. Thank you for joining me.
Happy holidays, everyone. Bye.
Holidays.